Hey everybody, I just wanted to provide everyone with a quick review of the Urban Environment's Day 1 presentation. Our goal today was to be able to define the terms urbanization and urban growth, describe what it means to be urban, compare urban environments between MDCs and LDCs, and finally explain the two contributing factors to the recent trend of urbanization in LDCs. Firstly, we took a minute to contrast an urban setting with a rural setting. Some of the things that we came up with, we started out with kind of our Venn diagram here, if you remember, for those of you that were here on A-Day. We talked about a very high population density versus a much lower density. Types of economic activities in a urban situation. We're going to have secondary and tertiary activities versus in our rural setting we're going to have predominantly primary economic activities. I think Finn on A-Day came up with a really great topic, which was resource consumption. And we said that resource consumption is going to be much higher in a urban setting versus a rural setting. We can get into pollution, crime, poverty. Whereas over here we have typically less crime, less poverty. But of course, these could both be questionable as we get into this. Lastly, we're going to talk about how this would be a much more homogeneous population versus this would be a much more diverse population. Okay? We do have a simple definition of a city, and it has three defining characteristics. We would say that it is large in size, it is very densely populated, and heterogeneous in its demographics. Of course, heterogeneous means diverse. And we took some time. I always like to draw on our own experiences and think about the places that we've been, and maybe whether they would be considered cities or not. Charlotte, Atlanta, Chicago, Tampa, Myrtle Beach. Some of the other terms that we may see in this unit or hear during this unit would be, of course, we'll talk about towns. How do towns or villages and hamlets differ from cities? We'll spend some time talking about centrifugal forces and the change in cities when it comes to suburban sprawl. And also we'll talk about MSAs, metropolitan statistical areas. That'll actually be kind of part of our topic next class when we get into megacities. I really need you to put on your global awareness hat again. We certainly like to think of ourselves as urban dwellers, and Charlotte is one of the top 20 cities in the United States by population. We sit at around 800,000 in our city proper, and maybe about 1.5 million in our MSA. So of course, we like to think of ourselves as a big city, but in so much of the world, our little city couldn't even compare to what is going on out there. And this process of urbanization is producing cities, the likes of which we've never seen before, these mega cities of at least 10 million people each. Now, some facts about urbanization. This is a relatively recent trend. In 1900, we only had about 20 metropolitan statistical areas having 10 million people, and now we've got dozens and dozens. We've got 400 that just reached the 1 million mark. Charlotte would be one of those, which is up from, just 13 metropolitan statistical areas that were that big 100 years ago. Urbanization has grown faster than our population, and in around 2000, we reached the tipping point where a majority of the people in the world now live in cities versus in rural settings. This is probably a result of the fact that urbanization is occurring at its greatest pace in the LDCs. I used to use the word ping as in, I used to say things like, developing versus developed. That's where that comes from. It's just kind of a carryover. Oops. From that. MDCs, they've been developed, they've been urbanized for quite some time. 18th century industrial revolution, urbanization was happening there. So that's left us with the LDCs to go through this process now. The United States has been 80% urbanized for quite some time. Gotta love World Mapper and their cartograms. This one shows, you can see that it's altering the size of the area of the country in proportion to the extra people that will start living in urban areas between 2002 and 2015. So it gives you some idea of the parts of the world where urbanization is having the greatest impact. We can see China, India, Nigeria, Turkey, I think, Indonesia over here. Sorry for the color. Let's change that. Indonesia over here, Mexico over here. These are areas where we can see that urbanization has had the greatest impact. Now, conversely, you can see that some areas have not really, or do not expect to see much change in their urbanization. So, what are the two factors that are the cause, or kind of the spark to this change? Well, the first that we have is that centripetal force of rural to urban migration. That would be, number one. That massive amount of push factors from the rural hinterland and the pull factors from that urban core that's contributing to this migration stream that we can see in LDCs today. Secondly would be natural increase. And if you can remember back to our very first unit, we need to remember that rates of natural increase are highest in the LDCs. Death rates are dropping as a result of this urbanization and this change of industrialization. Birth rates haven't caught up with them yet, so we're seeing massive population growth in these urban centers. Okay. All right. Now that you've got the gist of our first day's presentation, I need you to go to the website. I need you to download and complete the World Urbanization Activity. Okay, activity. That would be first. And secondly, I need you to prepare for our next class by taking notes on, let me see if I can write this in for you. You take notes on pages, let's see, 290 to 294. That's on megacities. And there's also an article linked to that, and I need you to read that and take notes as well. Hope everything's going great. You're enjoying your 2 days off, but we need to stay on track. So we will be ready in May. All right, email me if you have any problems, and I'll get back to you ASAP.